There we go. So thank you for joining me after the challenge that was last week. And I've now tried to put all that behind me because I do think actually my last week when I planned to do this originally, I managed to get the tech set up completely wrong. So it's lovely to see you all this afternoon. Thank you for bearing with me and coming back. Um, we're a small and perfectly formed group this afternoon, but let's still use the chat function. I think I know pretty much all of you, or I've come across all of you, but you probably don't know each other. If you wouldn't mind, maybe just pop into the chat function. Who are you? Where are you from? Where are you coming from? Where are you from today? And then you can get to know each other a little bit better. And in the meantime, whilst you're doing that, I'll just carry on saying hello and just do a little bit of a why am I doing this? This topic of confidence and presence, it just seems to come up so very often with my coaching clients. And I pretty much now 90% of my work is now with female leaders. So it's mostly with women. So it seems to be a topic that is really topical for women these days. So that's kind of why I chose this. It comes up so often, and I also think, let's face it, we as women in the corporate world or just in the world of work generally, we face a lot of barriers. We've got a lot of societal barriers around what women should or should not do. We face a lot of organizational barriers around what we look like, what we do, where we fit in, where we don't fit in. Um, but if we're really honest, I think we as individuals put barriers up unwittingly, put barriers up ourselves. So I look at it and I think, well, I can't change society. I don't want to become a politician. I'll continue to kind of fight and work and lobby organizations to hopefully educate them. But the one thing I definitely can do is take control of myself. And that's kind of why I'm focusing on this topic with you guys today is we've got a lot of barriers that we face, but the one thing we can control and we can do different is within ourselves. So let's have a bit of a quick dive in, just to check, so you can check and make sure that you're in the right place, wanting to hear the right kind of things. I think there are three essential and foundational things to developing your leadership confidence and so developing your executive presence as well. And the good news is these three things here, they're skills. They're not traits or characteristics. The fact that they're skills means we can learn it. We can all learn it. So whether you feel now, oh gosh, is this me? Is this not me? It doesn't matter if it's you or not you right now. It's a skill, it's a competence, a technique we can all learn. It isn't just a trait. So for me, there are three foundational things that are needed, no matter how much leadership development, no matter how much programs you might go on, how much knowledge you learn. If you haven't got control about the beliefs about yourself and others, if you haven't got your thinking and self-talk under control, and if you don't understand and identify with your values and your identity, then no amount of additional learning or development is really going to help you break through those barriers. And the reason I say this is I think it's kind of accepted. Competence, knowledge, ability, skills, that's what gets your foot in the door. It's a given. And it's expected. And without it, you can go nowhere. And in particular, this competence these days for women trying to work through the corporate world, in particular, this includes kind of business, strategic, financial acumen. And what do I mean by that? I mean, understanding the business, reading the financials, understanding the story that it tells, and just kind of knowing where the business is trying to go and what the risks and opportunities are. That's kind of like a given. We don't have any say. If we haven't got that, we can't get a foot in the door. And that is a whole another program and several other webinars to go into. But that's only a part of it. That only gets your foot in the door. What then really makes you stand out and be seen for what you really can do genuinely is your confidence. It's your confidence that gets you noticed. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to be really honest and say, when I talk about confidence, I don't mean cockiness, I don't mean boasting, and I don't mean stealing the limelight. Sometimes, particularly women I speak to, feel a bit ick when I talk to them about confidence. Oh, that's not no. Confidence is not the same as cockiness or boasting or stealing the limelight. And I'm talking about a very particular type of confidence here. Now, we're only here for an hour, so I can only go so far with us in an hour. And I generally hope that after that hour, for some of you go in and go, bloody hell, that's just what I needed. I know what I've got to do now, and I've got to go off and I'm going to do it. But at the end of the program, if you want to go deeper, the end of this webinar, if you want to go deeper, I'm going to be opening my doors in the next couple of days to my next intake, my Rise and Lead program, which is specifically designed for female HR professionals who want to break into strategic leadership. So today's a little bit high level, but hang on, I'll tell you about the program a little bit later on. But I mentioned their power. What type of power? I'm talking about personal power. So confidence, this very particular type of confidence I'm talking about is your personal power. And that only comes from the authentic you, knowing yourself, being comfortable with yourself, leveraging your skills and your strengths and being unapologetically you. And in a few minutes' time, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and why this personal power has really changed how I feel, who I am, and what I'm doing now. So I genuinely believe when we're authentic, we're at our strongest because we're relaxed. And when you're relaxed, you can listen. You can be empathetic because there's no kind of competing going on. There's no trying to be better or be the same or match or emulate somebody else. When we can step into our own personal power, we can release so much more ability from within ourselves. And I wonder, just to check if we are all in the kind of the right place here. And this is my introduction to telling you a little bit more about me and where I've come from. Do any of these things on the slide kind of resonate with you? We've got 6 um, situations, mindsets, categories, environments, 6 things. Can you relate to any of these? If you can, please pop it into the chat. You can say 1, 5, 6, or all of the above. Let's just get a bit of a feel. Are we similar kind of people, experience similar kind of things here? Because I know for such a long time in my career, I wanted to be seen as strategic and I really wanted to contribute to the business. I wanted to break through. I wanted to get into that more senior role. I wanted to be comfortable with all of these political environments. And it just felt really, really difficult and painful for me. So if I'm honest, I would put, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could relate to all of those during my career. Oh, and Clarice, thank you. You said yes, particularly the strategic bit. Yes. What on earth is the strategic bits? What do we do? How do we do it? And how do I know when I am doing it? And how can I get around to doing it when I've got so many operational stuff to do? Yes, yes. So look, this is maybe a good chance for me now to kind of move on and introduce me because, as I said, I could have ticked all 6 of those boxes during my career in the corporate world. So let me tell you a little bit about me, my story. That's me and my wonderful daughter there on the right-hand side. Now, you can easily look on LinkedIn and see the boring version of my story. 20 plus years working in the HR field. I did roles from employee relations, heads of HR. I've done trade union negotiations, pay negotiations, grievance, all of that horrible stuff. And then I moved sideways into leadership development, recruitment, talent. And that felt so much more comfortable for me. But throughout my time, no matter what role I did, and it was always within HR and what organization I was in, this was how I was feeling. But it wasn't until probably about 2019 when I really started to work on myself did I recognize this. I needed to be perfect. And this frustrated me all the time because okay wasn't enough. Perfect was all that was the minimum amount. But because I was striving to be perfect all the time, I was very emotional and I really reacted emotionally to other people's behaviors. And then I used to regret that and beat myself up all the time. Yes, I was called aggressive and emotional because I probably plumbing was. Because deep down, I always thought I had to prove myself because I thought I was just so rubbish. My confidence was low. I couldn't make a mistake. And I always thought someone was going to find out that I wasn't good enough. And I was carrying all of that around, and for an awful long time, it I couldn't tell you about it. It was all subconscious. It was all there in the back of my mind. But what I realized was just how much it was affecting my ability to feel confident about myself and to develop relationships and to really inspire that executive presence. It was holding me back. So nothing about my competence, my technical ability, but all about me and about how I showed up. And the root cause of that was that confidence piece for me. Does this ring any bells for anybody here? Oh, Nicola, thank you. You've nodded. Yes, I don't feel so alone now though. Um, and I knew that these kind of things were holding me back until it just got way too much for me. And in 2019, I took a big decision and I left the corporate world and I started to go and work for myself. And at that time, I was doing a lot of work. I'd worked with a coach for a long time before that, but I really got into some more deeper understanding of myself. And since then, it has opened so many doors for me. I'm in now such a different place. Being able to understand myself and my personal power has really changed things for me. Now, I'm not going to ask you to share this, but I'm going to ask you to start to consider what could be possible for you if you were able to dial up that personal power and able to step out and to feel and be different. What could you achieve? But more important than that, what difference would it make for you? Because I'm talking about going beyond just, oh, I could get that promotion, or I would go in and I would ask for that pay increase and I would get it. I'd like to start thinking more about what difference would that make for you on a personal level. Now, don't tell anybody. A little bit later on, I'll invite you if you feel comfortable to share that with us then. But I'm going to talk you through, talk you through my little model of three areas, and that might prompt some light bulb moments for you when you think, oh my gosh, I can relate to this most definitely. And if I wasn't like this is what I could do. But I want you to, as we're going along, I want you to be selfish and think about what difference could this make for you. Just want to quickly as well, I'll tell you about a couple of people that I've worked with. Now, I always have a really kind of strong commitment with my clients for privacy and confidentiality. So I never, and because I work a lot within the HR profession, if I'm quite honest, it's a small world. So I never actually, will say, oh, this is Michaela from where. But this is Michaela who I worked with. And I started to work with her about 3 years ago. And on and off, we've kept in touch. When I met her, she was a global HR leader. And these were her words. She was trying to be superwoman. And she defined this. We spent a bit of time kind of defining them. What is superwoman? What does she do? What is she like? How does it make her feel? She was driven to be perfect all the time. And boy, Michaela is immensely driven. This woman will go very, very far. But because of how driven she was to be perfect and correct and proper all the time, um, she expected everybody else around her to be like that as well. And she started to come across where she was really quite demanding and really quite abrupt. She wanted to secure a more senior role and move into the tech sector. And she was even talking about wanting to look at starting her own business. But this persona of superwoman was really holding her back. So we'd spent quite a few months working together. And rather than tell her to ditch superwoman, we kind of we rebirthed superwoman into strategic woman. So it was still authentic. It was still her, but strategic woman was far more focused on what mattered. She knew when to let things go and she slowed down. and slow down of her expectations of herself and other people. Now, I last spoke to Michaela 3 weeks ago, and she's in a great place. She has just come to the end of a role as HR director for EMEA, for a global tech company, and now she's making the decision that she wants to move on and to look for a different role. So it was absolutely fantastic working for Michaela, helping her redefine herself and find her own personal power. Then a very different client here, Kathy. She was one of my earlier coaching clients, and she was an entrepreneur, run her own business, well-being massage business, and of course, COVID time, it just absolutely stopped. She had to close the business down. It was at a difficult time for her because she was having to secure new premises as well, and everything just came to a halt. So she lost her premises, and she, in her words, she lost her business. She described herself as floundering and feeling thoroughly devastated. She talked about just always overwhelmed, a black weight on her back, stuck, unable to progress. So through coaching, I worked with Kathy for a good couple of months. I helped her understand and then ditch her automatic responses to challenges, which was always, yeah, but I can't do that. Yeah, but that won't work. Yeah, but that's too expensive. There was always a yeah, but, and she could not find her way out. By the end of the time that we worked together, she'd got a really great action plan. She'd found new premises, and she was in the process of building her business back up and to rebuild her business. So she'd gone from feeling floundering, devastated, to being back on track again. Both of these clients, this was all I had done is help them find their personal power to step forward themselves. So that takes me back to this three things required, my little simple model. I would say you need to understand and manage your beliefs about yourself, your thinking and your self-talk, your values and your identity. And at this point, I thought it was quite interesting because I'll come back to this little story as I go through this afternoon. My daughter, she's 18, and 2 months ago, she was involved in a really nasty car accident out in Corfu, and she was hospitalized for 2 weeks. So I traveled out there and helped her out. We're in hospital in Corfu, and suddenly it's all in Greek. Believe me, the health system in Corfu is very, very different to the health system in the UK. We hadn't got a clue what we were doing and what was happening. And my daughter was just there, broken legs, broken bones, really unwell. I was called rude by a Greek doctor. I was a rude English woman because I'd refused to leave the room whilst my daughter was basically having an autistic meltdown. My daughter's got autism and ADHD, and she was completely overwhelmed one day, but the doctors wanted to come in and wanted to examine her. And I said, no, I need to stay. I'm here advocating for my daughter. We've got to stop and slow down. She's just overwhelmed. And I was clear and frank with my communication. But that turned me into a rude English woman. And that just kind of reminds me, I think, of sometimes how when women adopt personas that we're not supposed to, that we're decisive, that we're assertive, that we are clear, that we are frank, rather than being feminine and nurturing and consensus building. That, it's very easily called something, labeled something, when actually all I was doing was matching this doctor's tone to me when I was told, you must leave the room. And I just said, no, I won't leave the room. So I always think this is quite interesting. So, and that for me, I think was a bit of me stepping into my personal power. Now, let's go into a bit more detail with each of these three. I'll do a quick level of detail and keep an eye on time as I'm going. Let's start with beliefs about yourself and other people. What do I mean by that? Well, what we believe drives our actions. And of course, our actions give us certain results. So we've got to start with understanding what is this belief and where's it coming from? A lot of the time, our beliefs are subconscious. We don't know about them. The other couple of things as well to know about our brain, our beliefs come from our brains. Our brain is constantly looking for threats. It never looks for the good stuff. It's always looking for Will something eat me? Can I eat it? Will I be killed? It goes back to our prehistoric days. So our brain's always looking for threats. That's the first thing it's looking for. And our brain remembers our previous experiences because we're pattern forming animals. Whatever happened before, it gets filed in the memory bank and pulled back out again. And it's hardwired in our brains. And the third thing to know about our brains is that our brains predict. So they predict what's going to happen based on what potential threat it's seen and what terrible thing has happened to us before. I find this fascinating. If you drink, there we go, Nicola, you're having a cup of tea, you take a sip of water, and you probably, or a cup of tea, you go, oh, that's nice. You feel refreshed straight away. That's your brain predicting because it takes up to 20 minutes for that water to really hit our bloodstream, for us to really be hydrated. But our brain is expecting that and it predicts that. So we get that feeling straight away. So knowing this stuff about our brain, it's always looking for the bad stuff. It remembers the bad stuff and it predicts what that just shows how strong our beliefs are when it comes to our actions and our results. So thinking back to me with my brain with my beliefs, I'm always and knowing then I'm going to be looking for the bad stuff, remembering the bad stuff, and then predicting that that's going to happen. I don't know if this resonates with you, but throughout my journey, my understanding about myself, a belief that I held deep down, it's a little bit like Michaela. I need to constantly be perfect. And okay is not good enough. Perfect is the only solution. And because mistakes are costly. So if that's my belief drives my actions. What kind of action was I then saying? Well, I'd stay small. I wouldn't try. I wouldn't push myself. So when things got a bit tough, I just kind of held back. I don't want to take risks, which meant that I didn't learn something new. Because I just held myself back here all the time. Now, if at any point any of this resonates with you and you feel brave enough, please, pop it into the chat function, even if it's just a OMG kind of, that's me too. But my belief there, needing to be perfect, mistakes are costly. On the face of it, you think that's good. Isn't that good? That would make me be good and strive for perfection. Actually, it worked against me, and it can work against other people with these. It worked against Michaela as well. Don't take risks. Don't try anything new. Some other beliefs of mine that I have learned to realize. I think people think I'm rubbish. I'm a bit incompetent. Who am I to say and do these things? I'm just a little Welsh farmer girl. So I've got to show them that I'm not. So I'm kind of being proactive. So what did that end up with me looking like? I could be very defensive because I didn't take criticism, not even criticism, someone having a different perspective to me. They think I'm rubbish, I'm incompetent. I've got to show them that I'm not. So I'm defensive. I could be argumentative, very, very anxious all the time because my brain was predicting the worst and I was looking for that killer concern. And believe me, in HR, I walked straight into the stereotypical HR blockers. That's what we're all called when we work in HR. HR stops thing or the fun police. I walked straight into that. So this was holding me back, and this was holding my confidence and my ability back, my beliefs and my actions. But one day, the first time I left my "you're rubbish" belief at the door, I felt so good and I really triumphed. And I still remember it to this day. I was asked to attend a meeting a long time ago when I was still at a proper job, as my daughter would call it, when I worked in the corporate world. I was asked to attend a meeting on behalf of the HRD. He was on holiday. I was his replacement. And I was presenting a proposal for, can you believe it, recording training and skills matrices, some of the most boring things possible. And there were two operations directors in that meeting who just didn't like, it felt like anything, the whole proposal. They didn't like it, but they weren't criticizing the proposal. They got really into criticizing me. They felt that it involved too much of their time, and what I was proposing was the HR team should do that. And I still remember the exact words and the exact body language. You're a support function, start supporting. There was fist banging, there was eye rolling. There was I mean, it was awful. But for the first time, I sat there and I thought, this is not my problem. I've presented something that the HRD has approved, has signed off, and I've come on his behalf to this executive meeting. Um, so the old me, if I was thinking about my beliefs, oh, I'm rubbish, I'm incompetent, I would have argued back. I would have been defensive. I said nothing. It felt like hours. It was probably seconds. I didn't say anything at all. And then when I did speak, I just asked them, well, what would you like to see instead? And no one could give an alternative. I felt I'd really stepped into my personal power there because I'd left that belief at the door that I am rubbish and I need to prove myself. I am not rubbish. I didn't need to prove myself. I retained my personal power. They lost theirs. So beliefs are so strong, and your beliefs drive your actions, which delivers you results. So, number one, beliefs about yourself and others. Number two, your thinking and your self-talk. Let's move on to this. And again, please, if anybody at any point thinks I can relate to that and I'd like to share a story or just show that I can relate, pop it into the chat function. It'd be lovely to see. And thinking, because this is thinking about yourself and your self-talk. Ants are automatic negative thoughts. Now, these are involuntary, habitual thoughts that just pop into our brain that focuses on the negatives or exaggerates problems or predicts disaster in a particular way. But what they do is they influence your perception of yourself, the world, and other people around you. I saw a statistics the other day when I was pulling this together. Apparently, we have something like 50,000 similar thoughts like this that cross our mind every day. God, that just feels so kind of overwhelming for me. But it's completely normal. Again, it's part of our brain that's hardwired to keep us alive. Thinking, oh, this is thinking of the worst. This links into our brain is always looking for threats. But it's when you get infested with ants. That's the problem. Ant infestation, as I call it, when your negative thoughts start to dominate your thinking. And often we don't realize that's happening until we're in the thick of it. Now, these are just 6 different categories. There are so many different types of ants, so to speak, out there. It might be that you kind of mind read. You assume you know what the other person is saying or doing, or oh, they're only saying that because, or catastrophizing. This is the world's worst thing that has happened. It's all going to go wrong. Thinking all or nothing. If I can't achieve this, then I'll never get to. If I don't get this GCSE, I'll never get to university. A little bit topical with my daughter a couple of years ago. Or always focusing on the negative. God, this is going to go wrong. Oh, this. If I don't get this technology right, it'll all fall down around me. Or predicting the future, fortune telling, or the one that I experienced most recently was this guilt beating. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done that. That's all my fault. And that goes back to my little exchange with the Greek doctor. Because the Greek doctor that told me to, leave the room, and I was a very rude English woman because I'd said no, I was staying and I was going to support my daughter. For days after that, I beat myself up. I felt awful. I could feel it. I feel these things in my stomach, and I felt that in my stomach for the best part of 2 or 3 days. And for those 2 or 3 days, I was small. I just went in on myself. I wasn't very strong at dealing with setbacks, and I was in the middle of Greece, not understanding what's going on, trying to arrange flights to get my daughter home, trying to figure out what medication she's getting and where she's going to get this surgery. I needed to be really on the ball. I needed to know what I was doing, and I felt like shit. I felt awful, and it took me a good 2 to 3 days until I realised, hang on, no, stop beating yourself up. It wasn't that I shouldn't have said that. I should have just left the room. I shouldn't have challenged them. I should have just let Sean get on with it and deal with it. And no, I did the right thing, but I beat myself up about it for about 2 or 3 days afterwards. So automatic negative thoughts can catch you out at any time, but they really then pull you down. And this is where an automatic negative thought can result in a new belief, then impacts on the actions that you take. But it's pretty simple, and this is genuinely, the question I asked myself over in Greece, and it took me a couple of days before I found the answer. Well, what evidence do I have to support this? Because I was telling myself, God, I was rude. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just gone with it. So what evidence have you got to support that you were rude then, Leon? And I played that conversation back so many times. I wasn't rude. I was frank. I was direct and I was clear. And do you know what? I matched his tone. So sometimes just asking yourself these simple questions, you might have to ask them more than one, and you might have to ask yourself several times. And sometimes you might need to get a friend in to really push you to, are you sure about that? Well, where has that come from? But questions like this can really reframe your automatic negative thoughts. So we've had beliefs, we've had ants going on. Then the last one, values and identity. Really understanding your values and your identity can help you build your person, step into and build your personal power. And I feel you're going to start to see how these three things do kind of link together and why they're so foundational for then developing your confidence, your credibility, your executive presence. So values, we probably all know what they are, a central part of who we are and what we do, characteristics, qualities, ideas, the things that we feel particularly strongly about, and we're probably defined by our values, and we use them to define what we think is worthy or worthwhile or beneficial or harmful. And you know what? When you're in a situation where the things that you do and the things that other people do around you and the organization you're in, when it matches your values, that's brilliant. When there is no tension or no rubbing up against your values, life is usually really quite good. You're satisfied, you're content, you're more likely to feel confident. But when things don't align with your personal values, that's when things can go wrong. And sometimes, I know for me, most definitely, when I've been in that situation, I haven't really understood why. I've just felt a bit yucky, a bit, ugh, I'm not happy here. Something's wrong. I might then have decided it's somebody else's fault. It's because what they have done. And my ant starts coming out. But actually, when I've scratched beneath the surface, it could well be something that's affecting your values. So understanding what your values are is really important. Now, as part of my little journey, I don't want to say this is a definitive list of my values, but these are the things that definitely are at the top of my values. Autonomy. I really need not to be told what to do. I've got to make decisions. I've got to have control. Yeah, this is why I work for myself. Creativity. Please don't tell me to recreate the same thing. I will want to recreate the wheel because I'm creative. My family, my daughter is so important to me and being there for her. And I think family and security for me kind of link together, making sure that I need security to provide for my daughter, to provide for my family. I'm a single parent. Yes, my daughter's got autism and ADHD. I've got ADHD. So family and security are really important things for me. And I want to have fun. Gosh, I can remember being told that I was a bit too loud in offices that I've worked in the past. Now I can probably say, oh, it's my ADHD, but actually I just want to have a bit of fun. I want to have a bit of a laugh as well. So if these are important values to me, then everything is fine if I'm able to live those values, apply those values to my work when I work. But when they don't, when I can't, when some of these values are kind of are bashed against, are damaged, what happens is we're more likely to go into our fight, flight, freeze mode. We may not kind of understand why. And in that situation, you can very easily ground to a halt, not really understanding why. And there were so many times I can remember the last organization I worked for before I went to work for myself, very centrally controlled. Interestingly, it was a global organization that was English, not even British, very, very English. a long, long history, 160 odd years old, very, very centrally controlled, very, very risk adverse. We don't take any risks with anything, and very traditional. I should have seen it coming, shouldn't I? Did not suit my value set at all. And for a lot of the time that I was there, I felt frozen. I don't know what to do. Fight, flight, freeze. I was out of my comfort zone completely. Now, interestingly, I always think as women, we're not overtly encouraged to understand what our values are and then strive to live to those values. The society, I said, they've got this society organization. Still, society, we are conditioned to be small as women. We're conditioned to support others, to help others. Now, it doesn't have to be explicitly told to us. So when I start talking to people about understanding your needs, your wants, your values, it can kind of clash a little bit with society's expectations of us as women. But I also think that's also an opportunity for us as women, if we understand this, that we are conditioned to be small, we're expected to support other people. Let's stand out there and really understand what our values are. This might be why we're not making the most of our personal power at the moment. And of course, understanding your values, the thing is, nothing is perfect. We're never all going to work for a perfect organization with perfect bosses. It just doesn't exist, does it? But if you know about your values, I kind of call it knowledge is power. When you understand what your values are and what is important, knowing why you feel a certain way, because maybe your values have been knocked, well, that's a good way to be able to neutralize those ants that you might be feeling, to reframe beliefs, and to give you the choice. Sometimes you can think, well, can I live with this, knowing that this is not perfect? Is this something I'll compromise, or will I not? Can I not live with this at all? And this is the wrong place for me. And again, so power, the power of choice, understanding what's important to you and doing and controlling as much as you can do around you so that you're in a situation where your values are less likely to be knocked. But if they are, you can understand why, and you can rationalize the feelings that you've got and take steps to manage those. I remember the very first job I had. No, it wasn't the very first job. I lied. Very early on in my career, I worked for an organization where employees were contracted to work 37 hours a week and managers were contracted to work 45 hours a week. And I think, oh, okay. But it was a very family-friendly organization. Lots of family, and this is going back 20 years. So for then, it was lots of family-friendly. You could apply to work flexibly. You could apply for term time working. All things that 20 years ago was really quite interesting or different, but not if you were a manager. That didn't sit comfortably with my values. Everything 37 hours a week maximum working for employees, 45 for managers. That's a lot. That's a lot of a difference. But of course, what they were trying to portray was what family-friendly organization we are. It just didn't sit comfortably with my value set. And now I understand more about my values, about that autonomy, that choice, about family, about fun. Yeah, just wasn't working for me. So this is why I think these three things combined is the foundations for growing your personal power. And why do I keep banging on about personal power? What's so important about personal power? I genuinely believe when you understand and can step into your own personal power, you are calmer, you are authentic, you feel empowered, you can be empathetic. What does that lead to? It leads to be able to influence and listen to other people. So you do not feel you have to compete with anybody now. Conversations or exchanges become more positive because you're not leaping to conclusions. Your ants are being kind of pushed down or being removed. And you can really cast an authentic leadership shadow. And I will deliberately talk about a leadership shadow, not a brand. A personal brand for me just has too much wrapped up with 1990s power dressing, dressing to with your shoulder pads or your suit. No, we're not encouraging. We're not in that world anymore. A brand is very different to your leadership shadow. You choose what your leadership shadow is, and you can manage your leadership shadow. And I would encourage you to think about that from an authentic way. And these three things, for me, is all about executive presence. So again, executive presence. So I'll just let somebody else in there. Personal power can lead to your executive presence because what do we mean by executive presence? Again, that might conjure up kind of 1990s idea of power dressing and shoulder pads, I'd said. Well, no, if you really look at people and organizations and how they talk about executive presence these days, it's nothing like that alpha male 1990s executive presence. It's about being comfortable with your own skin, inspiring confidence, engaging and empowering people. Now, unless you are comfortable with yourself and confident with yourself, you are never going to be able to do this. And that's why I see this big link between stepping into your personal power, moving with confidence, and delivering executive presence. And believe me, it really is the foundation. It's the foundation that this coaching client of mine, Adrienne, she worked in financial services. Now, done quite a bit of work in financial services. It's a love-hate relationship for me. Financial services is very traditional, very centrally controlled. So you can see where these rubbing up against my values. Traditional, centrally controlled, and very risk adverse. And it has to have several forms filled out before you can do anything. Adrienne was recently promoted to a VP level HR role in her organization. And she was really conflicted about trying to do the day job and being a leader. She'd had these two things almost separate in her mind. And over time, we started to understand, well, she admitted that she wanted to do it all. She felt she needed to do it all, but couldn't. And she was concerned about delegating to other people and being seen as overconfident and cocky. We scratched beneath the surface, and over a couple of weeks, we'd kind of figured out actually she had some really strong beliefs about about proving her self-worth, proving her worth, and being attentive to her team. Those are really strong beliefs that were then driving this. But I want to do it all. And then she was frustrated when she couldn't do it. It was preventing her from delegating to other people. She didn't want to be seen as overconfident because that's not being attentive to her team. So when we worked together, it really helped to make that mindset transition from doing the work, doing the HR activities, and leading other people. And yeah, she's since been promoted to same organization, but into a broader global role now. But again, I thought that was just a real interesting demonstration of how your beliefs about yourself and about other people, how that can really hold you back from stepping into your personal power. So let me do a time check. Right, we're almost there. This is the opportunity. This is the time where I'm just going to remind you. I asked you at the start just to start to think about what could be possible for you. Again, I'm not going to ask you to share or make you share this, but if there is anybody who through the course of this kind of 45 minutes has thought, oh, if I was able to dial up my personal power, that confidence, that executive presence, what could you achieve and what difference might that make for you? I know for me, what it enabled me to do was realize that I wasn't built for the corporate world. As much as I enjoyed the work that I did, I needed that autonomy. I needed that creativity, that space to be creative, and I needed that balance with my family that the corporate world wasn't giving me, and I was really losing out on my personal power. I now work with women who mainly work in the corporate world and want to advance in the corporate world, and that's what this personal power has helped me achieve. What it's now given me is far more time with my daughter, being there when she really needed me as she went through her diagnosis for autism and ADHD. Crikey, even just most recently with her broken leg, um, being able to kind of drop everything and go out to Corfu for several weeks. Um, Finding my personal power has let me try to lead the life that I want to lead. And I would love to be able to do that for you as well. Now, Paul, I can see you've just joined us late on, and I'm sorry that you've missed out on a lot, but we're here. And if you want to say hello and introduce yourself, please drop a little message in the chat, but don't feel that you have to either, though. So have a think. What could be possible for you if you were able to step into that personal power? And if I've given you what you need to take that action today, bloody brilliant. I'm really, really pleased that I've given you something to go away with. If you're a bit like me, it takes me a little bit longer. And I really do appreciate working with other people to do this. So if you want to go further and you want some further support to achieve this, as I mentioned earlier on, I am about to open the doors to my Rise and Lead program for the October intake. And this is a development program. It's a leadership program. Let's try to move forward. There we go. Specifically designed really for senior HR professionals, for women HR professionals to confidently navigate and overcome the barriers that to advance into their strategic leadership roles. It is for HR people. We don't exclude non-HR people. But obviously my background and my understanding is all through HR, and I can relate to individuals who work in HR so well. Because I'm really passionate about trying to break down these unconscious biases about what leaders should look like. And as I think I've said, I remember when I started to realize how much pain I was experiencing trying to fit in to that traditional leadership mold, and how much it was affecting my self-confidence and my ability. That's when I thought, I'm onto something here. Now I coach and develop women to find their authentic leadership style, so you can confidently navigate and overcome the barriers to your strategic leadership levels as well. And more importantly than that, love yourselves and ultimately live the life that you want to lead. So I'm going to try to do two things at the same time here, which, believe me, someone with ADHD is not easy to do. I'm going to move forward the slide for a second. Oh, I seem to have moved forward several slides there. That's what I wanted to show you. But I also, at the same time, want to try to find a link to be able to put into the chat function that will take you directly to, is it going to work for me? It's not going to work for me. I'll continue talking for a minute and pop the link in a second. So my Rise and Lead program, it's a 10-week program. I only take a maximum of 10 delegates because I want this to be as intimate as we can. And I definitely do not, this is not there's 50, 60 people on this course and you don't get seen or heard. With no more than 10, you get the best of both worlds. You get a peer group around you, and you get to have more one-on-one support from me and your colleagues as well. You know, we've got 4 learning modules. The first and the really important one is learning about yourself. We'll use a leadership profiling tool to help build your self-awareness, really understand your values, your beliefs, what you enjoy doing. Using that self-awareness, we then apply that to mastering conversations, or we can turn what might be, you might think, oh, this is a difficult conversation, I don't want to really great, productive conversations and exchanges. So we'll help you master those conversations with different people. We'll then help you consider what your leadership shadow is and what you want it to be, not a corporate brand in sight, to be able to step it into and share your own personal power with your colleagues. And then we'll use all of that knowledge to help build on how do you influence others. And more importantly for me, it's not just about influencing others, to be able to influence more than you actually control, which in today's kind of highly matrixed organizations where you've got dual reporting lines and, you know, crossovers between departments, influencing more than you directly control I think it's really important for us in the HR world. We're often asked to lead change programs, um, even just restructures. We can't control all of that, or we don't control all of that, but we have to influence it. Then we'll have a session on action, set a goal setting and an action plan, so taking action. And then I'm going to leave you alone for about 4 weeks. And then after that, we'll come back and we'll have a one-on-one accountability coaching session. So those earlier modules are with the broader group. This last module is just a one-on-one with me, where I'll help you make sure that you are on track, taking the action that you said you were going to take, and if you need a little bit more support to keep you going. So you get the best of both worlds there. You get working with a group and working individually. And all of those 10 weeks is just for a simple price of $9.95 per delegate. And I do have payment plans through PayPal as well. Try to make this as accessible and as affordable as possible. Little bit more. My slides just continually want to jump today. That's probably me, isn't it? How's it kind of built up? Each module has 3 parts. There's some online learning, self-directed learning that you'll access through a learning portal. Because this isn't school, I'll give you something to read, watch, consume, take part in beforehand. So it leaves our workshops to be really action orientated. We'll do peer discussions, we'll run simulations, exercises to really apply that knowledge that you've read and the knowledge you've learned from the online learning to put it into practice into a workshop. And then, of course, I'm going to challenge you to go away and to apply that. Each week, I'd love you to try to apply what you've learned, but you're definitely going to get that 4-week time between the end of the modules and the one-to-one accountability coaching that picks up at the end of the program. If you're a quick mover, we love quick movers. We've got some early bird offers here for anybody that wants to sign up before it's this Sunday midnight. I'm going to add in, I was going to say 3 early bird offers worth over £500. You'll get an additional goal setting coaching call with me at the start of the program to really get clear what your long-term goal is. And I don't mean performance goals in an appraisal. This is, where do I want to be? What's my journey goal? I'll then have another further call with you on a one-to-one to go deeper into the Harrison profile is the leadership profiling tool that we use. So you'll gain an even deeper awareness of what's helping or hindering your progress. And on the back of all of that, I'll give you a personalized self-coaching report on the topic of your choice as well. So if you can commit and sign up before this Sunday, those are the early bird offers as well. And do you know what? In HR, we are always the cobbler's children in that we're the last to get anything. We make sure that everybody else has had their development. Everybody else knows what they're doing, but we don't treat ourselves to the same standard. So I am so confident if you choose to join me on this program, it is going to give you exactly what you need. But if on the off chance, after 14 days, you think, no, this is not me, I've got this wrong, there's this no risk guarantee. All I ask is that if you've come along to the modules, that you've done the pre-work, you've really experienced the program. If it's just not for you, I'll give you 100% of your investment back. I want to make sure that this is the right program for you and that you really benefit from it. So just in case you are wondering, well, God, is this for me? Is this really me? Well, again, sorry, this is me. This was the 4 things that I felt during the course of my career in HR. So if you're feeling that you're not being taken seriously by executives, if you feel you're being sidelined, or just the frustration of dealing with these political dynamics, overwhelmed with juggling the day-to-day and trying to feel like you're thinking about strategy, well, does it just really feel unfair? If any of these kind of apply to you, you can put a tick in any of these boxes, then absolutely, this is the right program for you. Because this is how I felt, and this is how I've designed the program, where I've designed the program to address. So I'm conscious now. I have given you lots of different information to think about. I am also going to just try to give myself 30 seconds to find this link to put into the chat function. which I thought I had free, because the link will take you straight to the website where you can find out more about the program itself. So if I could be really and ask you to just bear with me for 1 second while I find the link that I thought I had easily available. Here we go. So I would love to see you at least check out that program. Check out the offers that I've got, the early bird offers as well. Make your way through that link to the site. But if anyone does have any questions about what I've spoken about today, doesn't have to be about the program, could be about any of my 3 circles, I'll happily hang on and answer questions or have that discussion. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you to everybody. But let me first be silent and see if anyone wants to have a chat and ask any questions. Oh, thank you. That's absolutely no problem. Thank you. I'm so pleased that it was of help. If you don't have any questions, I would say thank you very much for joining. Lovely to see you, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, I can do a heart, can't I?
Oh.